This video is a cautionary tale about the proper care of 3D printed blasters. Do not leave them in a car or in the sun, or this can happen to them. I don't know how well it's showing up on camera, but this thing is warped. It was left in a hot car in Florida for several days, and when they remembered it, they opened it up, and it had warped badly. The mag release is drooping, the trigger guard is drooping, whole bits of it are all warped and separated, and parts are delaminating. This is the downside of 3D printed parts. They work, 3D printers work because the plastic melts at a relatively low temperature and can then be extruded. The downside to that is they will remelt at relatively low temperatures. Now, it didn't liquefy, that happens at around 200 degrees, but anything up over 100 degrees, give or take, which you can easily exceed inside a car, the plastic will start to become soft and will either bend under its own weight or will bend under the forces that are inherently at work in something like this. So you don't want to leave it in a car, and you definitely don't want to leave it in the sun. I actually had to replace the 3D printed parts on the barrel of the Vulcan that I made for the Halo Warthog wheelchair because they had left it in the sun and the barrels had just drooped off pretty much. So it's something to be careful if you're at an event that's at an open park. If there's not a lot of shade, you're going to want some way to keep your 3D printed blaster out of direct sunlight. Have a bin for it, have a case for it, put it under a park bench, something. Because direct sunlight can definitely cause them to warp if it's warm enough. So, yeah, it would be a real shame if something like your Caliburn or your FDL, definitely an FDL given how expensive they are, if they were to warp to the point of being no longer functional. That would be a lot of money lost. And while you would only need to have the 3D printed parts replaced, that is still expensive and problematic if you don't have a 3D printer. Now, the good news here is I do have a 3D printer, and the person who sent this to me has told me that it's mine, that I can keep it. He wanted me to do this cautionary video to warn other people about proper care and improper abuse of 3D printed parts, but then I get the parts. So all of the hardware on this is still perfectly fine. All of the metal parts, all of the harder plastic parts, they're all fine. So I just need to print out new parts, all the other parts, which fortunately those parts are open source. So I can just print myself a new Caliburn and have a second one. That way I can have one that's got a heavy spring and one that's got a light spring. So if I want to use it for NIC stuff, for Blaster Tag Association events, that sort of thing, I can do it without having to take it apart. And then have the other one put a 788 spring in it and get it down low enough that I can use it at our events. So that will be pretty cool. Plus I basically have a loaner Caliburn, which is just neat. So there you have it. Keep your 3D printed parts out of the sun and out of extreme heat. Hopefully this will save at least one 3D printed blaster out there. If this has happened to you, go ahead, let's talk about it in the comments. And as always, thank you guys for watching.